For the creator track, we're talking with Will Austin, Senior Designer of Emerging Tech at Ganette and USA Today Networks. Will's talk at AWE 2022 is called Growing User Confidence in AR: How UX Can Build Strong Engagement Relationships. Will, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in the metaverse?
Yeah, sure thing. So I am a senior designer at Ganette, as you mentioned. I am working on a lot of the visual ends and story building. So my primary track is leading the transitions from our working with our journalists to translate the stories into mixed reality interactives. So trying to get that empathic engagement, the back and forth communication, bringing that back. It's meant to make things more receptive. I feel like what AR, VR, any other mixed realities, it helps put people in the shoes or in the positions of those moments and gets them to learn for themselves in a way. I know myself, very kinesthetic. So I like being able to tinker around and do. That's what gets me to learn better.
Same.
And I really find that as a very powerful way for storytelling. And I think it has a grand place in news.
Oh my goodness. Storytelling, the news, and mixed reality experiences. I'm sure this talk is going to be awesome. One question that we ask everybody is, how often are you in the metaverse and what do you do?
I'm in there relatively often is because of the track of the things that we do. We try and create various types of realities and things. A lot of them are historically context. As an example, one of our big projects we worked on was called 1619. We worked with a group called the Slave Wrecks Project. They are a series of divers that try and find better understanding of what happened to ships, vessels, and persons that were trafficked during the Atlantic slave trade, enslavement trade. So we worked with them to get a better understanding of what the ships looked like and built a simulation of it in 3D that you're standing in while we have speakers present a perspective story of the first Africans that were enslaved and brought to the United States and how the tragedy of the enslavement trade started for America. It was a really powerful piece. You know, the idea of occluding the person's environment and putting them in that spot. Thing that made me very inspired of that was in DC, the National Holocaust Museum. You step in one of the railroad cars and it is just gut wrenching when you get in that perspective in that spot. And we wanted to bring a museum exhibit to everyone. So we're in these spaces all the time because of the
Yeah.
story we tell.
Oh my goodness. And there's no way that you could tell such a chilling and compelling story with any amount of heart or relatability if you're not really a student of the medium, how it works, and how you can build those interactions and relationships that would work for such a wide audience. That's
Yeah, it's because otherwise you'd have to install an exhibit. It would have to be an exclusive experience. You would have to have the ability to travel somewhere, to go to something, and to be in it in order for that to work. There are, countless museums that tell these stories, but not everybody has the knowledge that they exist or the ability to just go and travel to learn. So, with augmented reality, mixed mediums, we can bring these things to more audiences and be more accessible to them.
not only making the technology more accessible, but then also making alive and manifest in ways that we've never been able to experience, like literally stories buried at the bottom of the ocean. Wow, super powerful stuff. Moving into the next questions, what's something that you're hoping to share with your audience this year at AWE 2022?
Yeah. So the key goal of this story is how we can continue to grow this audience to get them to better understand. We as AWE, as people in tech, can easily forget that our technology evolves so quickly that a lot of people aren't able to grasp or understand that these things even exist or how to operate them. Each one has a different use because mixed reality can be done in so many different ways. And that's why I think it's contextual. We're
Mhm.
occluding different levels of a person's space, either completely or partially. Being able to make it clear for the user to understand how to operate and how to use the space, and understanding what the interaction is will only make this more richer. My goal is to make augmented reality and mixed reality more everyday, more common, to that future that we constantly look forward to.
Hmm.
Getting that Star Trek, the Galactic Federation. I want more of that everywhere.
Yeah.
The way that I say it is, I want this tech to be boring, because the moment it becomes boring, it's everywhere. Our phones are so normal now. We yell at these magic boxes that can do
Hmm.
all these things. And before, the computers take up entire warehouses and rooms, and we're complaining about these little tiny things that has taken over everything. Everything lives in this.
I love the idea of making XR so ubiquitous it's boring. That's amazing. I was doing a little bit of a thought exercise just earlier this week about the metadata that you need to understand about an XR experience, even just in order to get started with it. Like what platform is it on? What hardware do I need? Does it work with my OS? Does it work with, the speed and the graphics processors that I have? Do I need to sign in? Does it take my app? Right? There's so many of these different questions that you need to know just before you start. I love the idea of making it boring. That's so cool. One thing that you mentioned that is a little novel for me in my thinking about AR, I kind of want to just sidebar on it, is you're talking about how like mixed reality tools occlude certain amounts of the person's environment. And I've often heard this kind of idea about, right, like how immersive do you want to be? How much do you want to add in? But you're kind of thinking about it as how much to show and blend, or even like remove the real world. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about what's the right amount to show or occlude?
Yeah, this whole metaverse conversation has really brought this to the forefront. For me, I think of it the way that people in our tech sphere talk about things of Web 2 and Web 3. Web 2, we're talking about responsive web. How do our pages, our interactive pieces expand to the medium that we're using, be it a desktop, your phone, wearables, handheld devices? When we're talking about mixed reality, it's the same thing. How much are we scaling? Are we consuming the entire world space and replacing it? Are we assisting or facilitating the things around us? Are we facilitating the objects around us or the user? So these are things that we need to consider. There's some big things that need to be solved for this. Like there's not a lot of conversations about the metaverse and ADA compliance. What does the metaverse look like to people with barriers to vision? How do we help that? What is that version of contextualized conversations? When we're talking about mobility use and being able to do things, how do we make sure that we're not leaving people behind in a new interactive space? So these are all things that we need to talk about and consider more as we're starting to build out these things. And what I hope is, as we get in there and start interacting more, we can find better ways for us to communicate and trade with each other. Like, you notice I use my hands and gestures all the time. The thing I think about is, everyone shows hand gestures with wearables. What happens when somebody's using ASL and they accidentally open up a contextual screen or something? How are we going to be able to read that? As we start to better understand hand gestures, all boats rise. We're going to get
Hmm.
better interactions, because by making sure that everyone can interact in these spaces, we're going to be able to have more accurate descriptions and conversations with the digital world married to the physical world.
Are there any ideas, or is there anything that you're hoping to encounter or to learn this year at the conference?
Oh, absolutely. I think, as part of the big part that we've been talking about here is, how do we get this to expand? We're still very reclusive. We're still very exclusive on these things. You still, you know, you either need to have your own private app or be part of an app infrastructure to be able to interact with a lot of mixed reality things. We have
Mhm.
great technologies like Eighth Wall that are fantastic, but they're not as widespread yet. So I'm always excited to hear more about what's going on. I've really enjoyed listening in on Eighth Walls as an example of one of them, the Antic, going out there and talking about how they're expanding and getting people interested. It's getting more people and getting it easier for people to get in and experience these things on a quicker base as we get away from tethered wearables. VR is getting into more just attached onto you and being part of the headset or things. We can be able to move around and be more flexible. That means more people can be able to access it and use it, have a wider space. So I'm very interested in hearing about what everybody's been taking on those challenges and
Hmm.
going forward and seeing what people are bringing to the table on that.
I've heard a lot of questions about interoperability and growth, and it seems like the outputs of your questions are core to both of those. So very cool. So we're in the speed round.
Mhm.
Congratulations. Do you have a metaverse avatar? And if so, what does it look like?
Yeah. So the metaverse thing is always tough for me. I don't want to get into heavy semantics or things like that, but for me, I've been in a Web 2 metaverse my whole life. As early as text MMOs and RPGs. I've been role playing as a troll in World of Warcraft since the day it came out. My wife and I got married on a floating island before with all of our online friends before we got married in the physical life. I've been a part of this whole
Hmm.
time. This visuals and storytelling is major to me. So what I'm waiting for is seeing more of that lifestyle being built more into this heavier metaverse in that livable part. I've never not been in it. So it's a little tough to I'm just waiting on that next level. Where does that go for me? And
Hmm.
where does my entertainment value fit in as just a diehard gamer?
You're really looking for that depth as somebody who's very comfortable in these sort of immersed or 360 spaces. That's
Mhm.
super cool. The prompt of, when will XR be boring is also probably when you'll be doing so many workaday things there. That is fantastic. Awesome. So the next question that we have is an opportunity to give a shout out to or introduce us to somebody who has impacted your journey with the metaverse, or point us in the direction of somebody who's been foundational in your understanding of this kind of technology. Is there anybody that you want to call out to?
Yeah, I'll make a big shout out to my former director, Ray Soto. He's a strong visionary. He and I have worked together for a long time. We worked in games and worked in the news. A great storyteller, incredibly inspiring. I would say keep an eye on him, the stuff that he is doing and the direction he is going. I think he's going to be leading the way in a lot of spaces. Also, big shout out to Charlie Fink. I had a lot of conversations with him and our AR pieces and projects. There's been some great dialogue and back and forth there. I love Niantic's talk last year. That was so powerful. I'll be keeping a big eye on them. A lot of interest in the direction they're going, and big shout out to just USA Today and what we're doing here. That they've been supporting us and giving us the room to be able to experiment and expand and try and find ways to reach out to new audiences and get them reinvigorated with journalism.
Yeah, as a storytelling, as an empathy, as a communications medium, I may be biased as a marketer here, but the promise for XR as a communications tool in general, I think is so powerful. Thank you for those generous shouts out. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we missed or anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
As we're getting into the metaverse, we just need to think about it not as a thing that is this far distance piece. We've always had it. We've been merging our digital and physical world more and more and more. Our digital DNA already exists with how much data mining there is on us. It just means of how much more of this space is going to be more digital, more contextual. So keep an eye out and pay attention to the things that are in the past and the future. Trends are always cyclical. We'll just see the next version. Look at interaction, look at things, I think big time. Look at the games industry. They have always been in the forefront and leading things. Look at entertainment. They have been in the forefronts and leading things. So, how do we use these inspirations that drive us, that bring us to that utopian future? That idea. I know people love Snow Crash and things like that, but for me, it's Starfleet. I want that future, the one that provides all of us a little bit of an easier direction, something that makes us feel better and moves forward as people.
I love it. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, my timer for this call is running, so we need to wrap it up today. Will Austin, Senior Designer of Emerging Tech at Ganette and USA Today Networks, will be speaking in the creative track. So look forward to talking with you at Augmented World Expo in just a few weeks.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Take care.
Ah,